Welcome to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Frank talk about sex and dating.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. We are going to do part 2 of our last episode, which was episode 4. So this is episode 5. And we're going to primarily hit sex while dating. When to have it, when not to, everything around sex. And we'll have 2 female perspectives. So we'll have Carissa again, and I here, and Daniel is back, of course, because of part 2. And I'm going to reference, or at least share ahead of time, a couple of books. The latest one I just read, Comedy, Sex, God, is really helpful, especially people that were really religious growing up and have issues with sex because of it. I think that's a very helpful book. And then Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, as well as Surrendered Single, the one I mention all the time as the Bible or must read, and has a perspective. They both say you should wait around 90 days or so to have sex, just to make sure you're actually in a relationship before you do this, or at least say you're committed and exclusive before you do, which I do have to say sometimes that does work, but we're going to have male and female perspective, and we're going to get started. So Daniel, we talked ahead of time. Could you maybe start with that story you mentioned that happened to you recently?
Yeah. So on Saturday, actually it was Thursday, and I had a date planned on Saturday with a girl, and I was in DC on Thursday, and I was just it was great weather, and it was about 10 o'clock, and I was like, I could stay here till 2 a.m., or I could text this girl I'm seeing on Saturday and see if she wants to have a pre-date and spend time together beforehand. And now it was tricky because I kind of invited myself over to her place, and her text back was, I have no intention of having sex tonight, so I don't know if it's a good idea, because in the past, every guy that comes over, we have sex and then he doesn't want to see me again. And in my mind, I honestly was just tired, and it was on the way home and wanted a place to relax before going home. And then when she mentioned that, I was like, okay, is she thinking about sex? Was sex even an option in the first place? I guess I'm going to be interested in having sex because she brought it up. And that's where my mind went. Like, anytime a girl brings up, I'm not having sex with you, the immediate thought is, okay, why is she thinking about sex when I wasn't? And from there, it was like 45 minutes of texting, 3 phone calls to understand if we're both on the same page. And then in the end, I was almost back to driven 50 minutes back home, and she lives another 25 minutes away. And I texted her, like, I'm going to go hang out with a friend. I think we should just wait till Saturday. And that's when it came back to, oh, no, I didn't mean to text you. I was in the shower getting ready for you. And now that you're not coming over, I feel so bad. And I should have told you earlier. And I was like, I would much rather go hang out with you than go hang out with a friend I've seen any other time. But the friend thing was a lie. Like, for me, it was manipulative, but I just wanted a response. I was tired of texting back and forth. Like, it's either no or yes. I didn't care either. It was just the in between. So, like, I don't advocate for making up a fake friend that you're staying with, but it was also like, I'm kind of drawing a boundary here. This is obnoxious for me. Like, are we staying together or not? I'm fine either way. And then the moment I get there in park, she's waiting outside, and we hugged to say hi, and she wouldn't let go. Like, it was like embracing attractive hug, and then she lets go. She's like, oh my God, your eyes, and then starts making out with me. I'm like, I thought there was no intention of hooking up or having sex here. So what is actually going on? And that's would help to kind of get the female perspective there.
Yeah. And for me, it goes back to the double standard thing, where women are taught and we're shamed, and everyone thinks we should wait and we have to be good girls, and we have to say the right things, but deep down we like sex just as much as men do. Not every woman maybe, but a lot of us do. And we want to be able to have it, but society has taught us to feel guilty and bad about it. And that's what part of the reason I want to have this podcast is to be sex positive and normalizing sex. And women want it just as much as men. So yeah, she had to say the right things, and and maybe if she wasn't attracted to you, maybe she would have not wanted to have sex, but because she found you attractive, and it was late at night, and it was like she said, she has done it before. And granted, it might not be what she wants if she does truly want a long-term relationship, and that's what she needs to decide for herself. And where I can also get confused, like, you have to know what you want. When you know what you want, you're going to be more inclined to, say no if that's not what if you only, if you want more than sex. So, Carissa, what do you think on that?
Well, I would like to know what happened then on your date on Saturday, if you still went. Number one, if you still went, and then how did the date go? But specifically with regarding to the, going over there pre-date, seeing if you had chemistry, and her bringing up sex, similar to what Tamara said, is women, do like sex as much as men. Yes. I mean, I grew up staunch Catholic, and you don't have sex till you're married. So, you can't express how you really feel, or, if you, are wanting to have sex and you just happen to be the person that came around. But, I definitely think it's a double standard. And I do find it interesting that she brought it up to say no, because that sends confusing signals. I think right now in this age of consent being, you have to be really clear with consent, both parties. So sending mixed signals at the beginning, like we're definitely not having sex, and then as soon as you got there, she was all up in your game. So, I mean, I just think I don't know. I find it interesting. I think that's certainly not something that I would do. But I also think, like Tamara said, we have to say we're a good girl and no, we're not going to do that. But then, on the other hand, we enjoy sex as much as men. But anyway, so that's kind of my take on it. I think she was trying to put that out there that, I don't want to have sex, or, this is the deal. But I don't know. I mean, I find it interesting that she sent you mixed signals and just wasn't clear. I mean, I just wouldn't have said, we're not going to have sex. I would have just been like, okay, let's see where it goes. And then if it did go there, make sure the conversation is appropriate, and that you're both consenting adults. And as long as the consent is there should be no shame on either side.
Yeah, I was just going to say, do you remember how was Thursday and Saturday? I am curious about that too.
Yeah. So not to harp on the whole, I don't intend to have sex thing, but a lot of times, whether girls do this on purpose, it's like, I'm not responsible if I don't like this interaction. Like, if we end up having sex, it's your fault if it goes wrong. Like, I didn't intend to do this. And it's like, after we had sex, she is like, I had no intention of doing that, and like smiled at me. I'm like, what is going on here? And I'm glad that I have a lot of experiences that I can have reference experience, but for guys that are uncomfortable in the first place, like, that situation is difficult to handle. And her and I had an hour and a half conversation afterwards while we were at her place about like the double standard, about how she's actually a school teacher for special needs, and she was explaining how consent is sexy and consent is taught in school these days, and so it's very confusing why she's teaching these things, and then she pulls this line. But for me, she was saying that boys are taught not to pull girls' hair anymore, and the discussion we were having is, okay, but you're teaching that concept. The boy didn't really learn to pull a girl's hair. It's more behavioral or animalistic or psychological, and that's how they're communicating. Like, a girl will punch a boy, and that's how he likes him or she likes him. And she's saying, we're teaching kids not to do that anymore, and we're teaching them to ask if you want to pull someone's hair, ask if you want to punch someone. I'm like, doesn't that not work? Because the implied like consent it's difficult. It's like, if she would have said, hey, I'm going to have sex with you, do you want to come over? I would have probably said, I'm not into that. But that's exactly what happened with the situation, underlying and non-verbally. And so when Saturday came, I didn't really want to take her out on an actual date. Like, I was just interested in hanging out and relaxing and having more conversations and watching TV and keeping it low key. It's like, after that happened, it's not that I lost respect or didn't trust her or anything. It's just like, I don't see this being something I want to bring to the outside world. It's easier just you're 25 minutes away and I'm looking to relax and something might happen, and you already made it very clear that you're not straight up with what you want anyway. So why would I risk, something in the future?
And I've because it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, where, like you said, you didn't really lose respect, but you kind of put her in the bucket of, not relationship material. And it's not necessarily because she had sex, but it's because she was wishy-washy about it. It sounds like, is that true? Yeah, that's you're shaking your head. Yes, it was more that she was wishy-washy.
Yeah,
Doesn't know what she wants.
it's more the mixed signals. I've learned that anytime a girl gives you mixed signals, it's not necessarily me or her, but there's something going on that's not being said, and I just don't either. It's like guys will text a girl and be like, I don't know if she likes me, and she's sending mixed signals. It's like, move on. That's what I say.
Yeah, and then of course women are always like, ideally everyone would know what they want in life and go after it, and it would be very clear, and we would clearly say what we want and need. But that is easier said than done. Carissa, you wanted to say something?
I had more of a question, Daniel, for you to clarify. She was sending mixed signals, and so you kind of put her in that bucket. If the communication had been different, do you think that would change, and what would that communication look like?
One, I kind of set myself up for failure by, trying to get myself over there before a date even started. And this all could have been avoided. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about. I was like, okay, say no and then just see each other on the date, and it could be avoided. But the other part right now is, how could this have been handled differently? Well, I had called her to clarify, if she actually wants me to come over or not, because just texting, hey, we've never met before, I want to come hang out. And she says, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm not going to bed until later. So I called her to make sure everything was on par and made sense. And that's when she said, hey, I just want you to know that if you come over late, a lot of times this ends in sex, and I don't have any intention of having sex. And that, to me, that just goes in one ear and out one ear. She's just saying this so she doesn't have to feel bad later, or she's saying this so I don't view her as something. I don't actually consider that unconsent or not giving consent. I think for me, once it reaches the threshold of going back and forth for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, I'm like, this person's not for me. But I'm just going to take it where it goes. Like, if this person was interested in me, they would either said, hey, let's wait till Saturday, drawn a boundary. But because the boundaries were murky, because I had no idea what she was looking for, I was like, I'm going to go over there and see what happens. Then the moment that we saw each other and she made a move, I was like, well, I mean, I'm not going to go inside.
Yeah. So it goes back to, if you know what you want, then you have boundaries. And if you truly want a relationship, you have the boundary and say, no, let's wait for an actual date. And even if you did come over for some reason, you would have literally just watched TV or slept in her guest room as a nice gesture, which probably should have not been the option. But yeah, when you truly know and you have boundaries, then this would be prevented. So the fact that she said it's happened in the past, and I'm sure it's happened for other women that way too. But go ahead, Carissa.
So my question is, with regard to that, is, does that send a signal if a woman invites you to their home? Does that send the signal of, hey, it's, maybe next steps? Yes. I mean, does that, like you said, there's some subliminal subtext there. And if a woman invites you to their home, does that subtext mean, hey, maybe we can take this a little bit further? Maybe not sex, but, a lot more physical intimacy than, if you were out.
For me, let's take girl A, girl B, like same situation happens, but I'm in my mind, I'm nervous and actually, see a feature with this girl based on her profile. Cause me and this girl matched online. Like, I knew in my head, I was like, I want to see this girl again. One, I probably wouldn't even risk going over there on a quote unquote pre-date in the first place, because it never really goes the direction you want unless you find, some level of commonality. And otherwise it's more of like, hey, let's just get the awkward sexual tension out of the way so we can focus on the date. But it never actually plays out that way, I find. And that's kind of what she was hinting at, is like, hey, we're kind of ruining this experience, but we both want this experience at the same time, so come on over. And it's like the candle that burns brightly burns the quickest. And it's instead of going that route, like, hey, let's hang out. Even after you go on a first date and you don't actually, there's no sexual intercourse or sexual intimacy or physical touch or anything, and then you go over to their place and then the same thing happens. It's the same concept of, okay, now we hooked up. What is this? Like, what's happening? Does one person say, oh, I'll just not tell them how I actually feel until we hook up more times and see if there's anything there, or do I tell him right away that I'm into him? And it's the same thing. It's like, when do you actually show your clear intentions? Because if your intention wasn't to have just to have sex, what is your intention in the first place?
Yeah, I dated a guy, and we really hit it off our first date. We met close to me, but we just did dinner and he left. And we went out, I can't remember if it was the next day or a couple days later, maybe 2 days later, to pretty much the same restaurant actually, and totally hit it off again. And then we talked about even being exclusive already. Like, we said, well, we could just see where this goes. Like, we both like each other, but I think it was kind of that candle thing where it was like burned brightly, and we literally were going to just see where it goes. And he started using the word boyfriend already, and it was awesome. And then we decided, like, on our third date, we had basically 2 dates in one day. And on that evening we said, well, maybe we should wait. And they're like, well, we both like sex. Like, why not just have sex? And I don't know if that was the beginning of the end or not. Maybe we lasted 6 months, but, we both said, like, we don't want to ruin it. And then yet we, on our, fourth official date, cause it was, 2 in one day, we ended up doing it. Kind of goes to what you were just talking about.
Are you familiar with the concept of love bombing?
I have had someone tell me about that, but tell us more.
That situation where the guy's like, I'm your boyfriend already, and it's like a second date. So that's similar to the concept of love bombing, where the person is coming from, like, they're so needy that they have to overwhelm the person with this concept of I love you before you actually love the person. Basically like infatuation versus love, where they'll just, they'll buy you flowers on the third date. They'll act like you're in a relationship for a year or 3 years, or you're married already, but you've only known each other like one time. They're basically projecting what they want to be doing, and they're basically selling themselves in a weird way that is quite overwhelming, especially if you are, you are compatible and you have chemistry. It can be highly manipulative.
Yeah, I mean, that honeymoon phase of it lasted 3 weeks, and then he started kind of pulling back. He realized his mistake probably and started pulling back. And rather than just go with it, I had to point it out, like, oh, you seem to be pulling back, which made him self-conscious about it. And then he's like, you're starting to, I can't remember the wording, but you're ruining this. And I brought it up again, a little bit later. He's like, now you're sabotaging it. And, each time I felt like I had to say it and bring it up, which was not helpful. But I mean, like I said, we did end up together 6 months, probably longer than we should have. But, yeah, I have heard of love bombing. I've not heard it explained that way. That makes more sense. Yeah. Just people wanting a relationship. So they're like, all right, we're in this, start it prematurely that they're in a relationship. Carissa, do you have a thought on that? Or should we go to a different topic? All right. I see no thought on that.
I guess I was going to just say my 2 cents is, I mean, if a guy calls me last minute to do something, I have plans. I have a life. I have plans, whether I have plans or not. Kind of like what Daniel said, love bombing. I mean, or trying to get that, I don't know, pre-date or whatever. And I don't know if I'm sabotaging myself, but I'm like, if it happens to work out and I am out somewhere, then I'll say, hey, I'm out at wherever, but I'm not making plans and having someone come to my house for the very first time, because I think exactly what you said, Daniel, is, likely to happen. So, I have plans. I'm an independent woman. If you want to make plans with me, you need to make plans with me ahead of time. So, I don't know if that's helpful in any way, but that's my 2 cents.
Go ahead, Tamara.
No, I was just going to say, it goes back to boundaries. Yeah, even though if you're excited and you want to go on a date quickly, like I did and I'll usually do, waiting the requisite days in between and having boundaries and not going so fast, let's start an actual relationship. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, so I know a lot of this conversation's been around her intention and whether she was confusing with intentions, but technically my intention was, originally I stated as I just want to go home and relax on my way home and spend time with someone. In my mind, I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of down to have sex, and it sounds like this might go that way. And but in reality, if we went over there and just hung out and didn't have sex, I would probably be more likely to probably take her on a date, an actual date. And it's not like, oh, I don't respect her, so I don't want to be with her. It's like, how far can this go if we're already, having this amazing sex right away? It's usually not a good sign. I'd rather have gone there and I wanted to go in her home before making out or doing anything. I was already uncomfortable with that, and me being a guy, I was like, screw it, I'll go for it. So that decision was already made before I entered her home, that I knew I wasn't going to really be interested in a long-term thing, because whether I'm attractive or not, or I'm super special or not, like there's no possible way besides pure like attraction for that to happen. And I don't think that survives long-term. And right, something that I've talked to my friends about is like, when do you put a label on something? And for me, this is more an ideal or a concept. It's not actually what ends up happening. But if you 6 to 12 months of not putting a label on it and not even having the conversation, but you're still talking, you're still interacting, she's starting to meet your friends, and the conversation comes up of like, what are we? I think that should happen not at 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. 6 months is a long time of having natural attraction without being monogamous or exclusive. I think a lot of people say, I want to be exclusive in relationships so I feel comfortable and then I can move on and not ever have to date again. And that, I feel like that's a trap.
Yeah. And the one time it worked out well for me, it was 6 months. It was long distance, but at the 6-month mark, I'm like, oh, so what do you think we should do? And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, should we be exclusive? Because I haven't been, because we haven't said it, and then he was suddenly like, okay, yes, definitely. Let's be exclusive. And he also was not, because we were dating long distance, but once we had the talk, yeah. And it was 6 months, and that does seem to be ideal. I almost got engaged at 6 months once, like it was, or I had the talk about future and stuff. That seems to be the key time frame. And I do have one situation. Maybe I'll ask you guys. I'm supposed to meet someone long distance in a couple weeks, and our love languages are the same, which is quality time and physical touch, which basically means, yes, we like sex. And I think we should wait, because as we're talking about this, and he said he doesn't put a time frame on that part. Like he's already talking potential future, which may be more of the love bombing stuff again, or he just legit wants one. And we've talked enough that we feel like we could be, have a good potential. But I'm sure you're going to say I should wait. But go ahead. Any thoughts on, or I guess it's kind of the same thing.
It's not that I want to understand the scenario more. So is he coming to visit you, or are you visiting him?
We were going to originally meet in a neutral city, and then it felt like it was almost too much pressure. So I was like, well, I'm just going to go there, because I like to get airline miles. So I fly. I have no problem taking lots of trips and building my miles. So I offered to go there. Normally on dates, I insist the guy come closer to me the first date. Like that's my thing. You come closer to me, make as much effort or more effort. But I am going there. Yes.
Have you guys video chatted or called? Like, how long have you guys been talking?
We've been talking regularly. I have a YouTube channel, so he's seen my videos. He wants to video chat.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you've seen that enough. Like, let's just talk and text and do our usual, our profiles match. Like every time we say, we're like, yeah, me too. I know it's like all girls want to hear that. Me too, me too. And maybe guys too. But I don't know. We seem compatible. Like the stuff we've talked about, what we want in a relationship.
Are you, not that there's a difference, but are you staying with him, or are you getting your own hotel?
The plan was to stay with him, and he has an extra bedroom. And of course, the first night for sure, I was going to stay in the extra bedroom and then see how it went. But I feel like I'm setting myself up for failure already by talking like this.
Is it failure? What's your intention here?
we want to see if we have chemistry and we have potential. Like he's planned the whole date. Like, we're going to doing many activities. So it's not like we're just hanging out at the house. Like we have reservations and things we're doing.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't turn into that. But we like sex.
So what happens if you don't? What happens if you don't want to have sex with them or don't want to be there? You're just going to sleep in the guest room still?
Yeah, or I have a friend that lives an hour away. That's why I chose to go there. I guess I should have mentioned that part. That's my home state. So I'll be close to other people. And I let my friend know that the weekend I'm coming. I said, in case I need to ditch him, this is the weekend I'll be there.
I guess more of a healthier approach might be put him as secondary. Like, this is my home state. I'm coming home for these reasons. And then I'm happening to actually go on a date with this guy. Rather than I'm going just for this guy. And if things don't work out, then it's a whole ruined experience.
Yeah. I don't see it not working out, but yes, that is. And she knows. So yeah, I'll have to think about that part of it.
if it works out, it's fun, and I'm just providing the alternative. Not saying not to do it. You got to be careful in these situations, whether it's like safety, physical safety, or actual like unknown boundaries of, okay, well, I'm sleeping in his guest room. Maybe I'll just sleep in the bed with him, and we'll see how it goes. But I would just like wing it, go with it, do what you want to do. It sounds like you are sex positive, and it's one of those like, I don't intend to have sex, but I hope it happens kind of thing.
I don't know, societal pressure again, and after reading a couple of those books I mentioned early on, having an actual connection and being friends and enjoying company, and then having that be something to look forward to makes a lot of sense. But then I've also talked to other guys who are like, oh, I married the woman. We had sex our first date and we got married. So, there's such a range of it. I guess it's just between the two of us and we'll figure it out. But we are getting close to the end. Any parting comments from either of you?
So, my thought on going to see someone for a date, I am all about, I don't want to say exit strategy, but I'm a grown woman. I have my own. I've made arrangements. I'm going to stay at a hotel or stay at a friend's. If it's those things can be changed and canceled if things go well with the person. But I've had friends and that have gone to places, and then all of a sudden, then they were like, "Okay, we're going on this hike after I pick you up," and then like you're in the middle of nowhere by yourself, and oh, guess what? We're breaking. I know. I'm done. I don't want to spend time with you this weekend. And then they had nowhere to stay. They had not made plans. And so they were trying to figure out how to get home. So it was like a big, huge, hot mess. It doesn't sound like that would be your situation. But, for me, I think it's like I said, a boundary issue for me is like, if I'm not really having fun, then I'm going to go back to my hotel room, and then we'll hang out tomorrow at the activity that we talked about and, be done with it. But all right, Daniel, to you.
Yeah. So interesting side story real quick. My younger brother and his girlfriend took a trip like an hour and a half away to go to like the Shenandoah Mountains and hang out. And on the way down, he broke up with her without like, he didn't realize that he wanted to end the relationship, but as they were talking, as they were getting away from like the city life, he realized that it wasn't working. So the whole time there and the whole time back, they were in this state of like, we just broke up. We don't want to talk to each other, but we're stuck in a car and we're going to drive an hour and a half back home. Sorry this happened. Yeah,
sounds fun. Actually, that's how the 6-month thing ended. We ended things on a trip together while we had half a day left till I got to the airport. So we drove around, checked out the city. He drove me to the airport early, and it was kind of like, well, that was fun. But anyway, any closing comments, Daniel, on, like in general for this episode?
I feel like we haven't even gotten to the gist of all of it. There's like the surface level of intention and what to expect only in the first experience. Like we talked about when meeting someone for the first time, do you have sex and what's the usual outcome? And then also if the person says they don't want sex, do you still put yourself in a situation where sex could happen? And then they're like, oh my God, I'm so glad we had sex. I didn't want this to happen. And it's not, for me, it's not the girl's stuck in the societal pressure. So the guy either pushes forward or he draws a boundary and says, let's wait to like go on an actual date. I find it's better to find out that sex is on the table and then not dive into that main course until later on, and you have the tension building. I think the more tension you can build before a date the better the date will be, rather than popping the bubble and saying, I'm not into this.
No, great points. And we can go further if you want to talk about the later aspects, like once you're already dating, how far and that kind of stuff, or we can save that for another time and get into, sex in relationships but I don't know. This is kind of like a teaser of more to come. I guess we could leave it at that unless you want to have something else you want to add. All right. Doesn't look like it. So if you enjoyed this and other episodes, please subscribe and like. I also started a Facebook group So you can, from the same name, if you want to join that group, and we can have conversations in there. And there's also a website with the same name, and you can email us as well. So reach out anytime, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Carissa.
Frank Talk, sex and dating educates.